The little things are the corporates that undermine the infrastructure of our homes. We pay all the attention against when we see those roaches and those rodents and those little crickets in the house, and we put all of our attention on them, but we don't see and pay any attention to those little small termites that are eating away at the infrastructure of your home because they don't demand your attention right now. And most of the time they don't demand your attention is because they're out of sight. Out of sight, out of mind. So think about it. Those spiders, you bring in the guy, the pest control man, he's taking care of other things. And he may say, have you ever considered termite? Oh, not my house. Oh, we don't have termites. We sprayed when we moved in. When did you move in? 30 years ago. We got to understand this. The little things do not work on the surface. They work internally. They work subconsciously. They work systematically. They work gradually beneath the obvious. The little things that you encounter that all of a sudden appear was so small and insignificant that you paid little or no attention to, and you know it. Satan wants you to ignore your fears and insecurities, so when you're at the threshold of your greatest breakthrough, that's when he brings them up. When you thought you overcame certain things, Satan says, oh, no, I'm not going to let you get a breakthrough without this giant standing in front of you. He may have put that giant to the side, and that's his ace boom coon. That's his ace in the hole, so that when you're ready to go in, when you're ready to cheer and celebrate your breakthrough, all of a sudden, here comes that thing that you've been wrestling with, that you pushed aside and you thought that you didn't have to deal with. We have a tendency to give all the attention to the pimples on our face and no attention to the lumps in our bodies. I encourage every woman in here to check your body, to check your breasts every time. And men too, because men are now encountering breast cancer as well. I encourage you to do little things, but I'm here to tell you, it's not just that, but what about those little character flaws? Character flaws, the things you dismiss, the things you say, oh, that's just nothing. It's like little things you see in your children and you saw in your children, and they were little areas of disobedience, and you just chalked them up as something cute. And that child grew up to be a monster, disobeyed you in everything you said, never did anything you wanted them to do. But you smiled at them when they told you, no, I'm not going to do it, without backhanding them or slapping them or throwing a shoe at them. I don't care what it was. You got to do something so that they'll pay attention to not obeying you as a parent. So when they're old, listen to me, this is why we instruct our children. When they're old, they won't depart from it. You see, there are certain things that you can teach your children and get into your children and by dealing with your own personal issues. You see, sometimes you relent and pull back because you think because you know better than your child. You did certain things too, so you say, let them go. Some things are not worth letting go. You got to address immediately. Immediately, because you don't know what seeds are growing in them and what is germinating those seeds when they go to school. You see, you are a fertilizer, but they go home, but they go to school and they get all the water there. All the negativity, they see all the F words and all of the words on the boards in the schools and all the things and how the children act. And you think sometimes, oh, it's just small, man. Don't be deceived. Those are little corporates waiting to grow. And when they become grown, they're going to ignore you. And you know who's responsible for it? You are. You have to be very careful about minding the little things, because when the little things get out of hand, the big things will soon follow. And so while you spend all your energy working and fighting the obvious, the small things are eating away at your confidence. The little things are eating away. You know there are things you won't even go into a business because you're fearful. Those are little things. They've been eating away at your confidence and eating away at your trust in God and eating away at your ability. And somebody's telling you what you can't do and what you'll never achieve. And so therefore, it's just small little things you tend to pay attention to on the slide. It's just you have it in the back of your mind, and you allow those things to all of a sudden become a prescription for your life. This is what you're going to do for the rest of your life. You got to have confidence. If you're going to dispossess the enemy from the land that God has given you, you got to have confidence. Confidence is key. We call it swagger today. There's just something about a confidence it's not a cockiness. It's a confidence, especially when that confidence is in God. The Bible says itself over in Hebrews 10 and 35, it says, therefore, do not cast away your confidence, which has great rewards. There are tremendous rewards when you're confident. But imagine when you're not confident what you won't do. Paul said also in Ephesians, he says, in whom we have boldness and access with confidence through faith in him. Confidence is important. You got to have confidence. If you're going to live successfully in this life, you got to have confidence. Beloved, you know the challenges you have them every single day. And just because you are an adult today doesn't mean that you don't encounter peer pressure. You just encounter peer pressure on an adult level. It's the same as when you were a child. The same children that put you under pressure when you were a child are the same adults that are putting you under pressure today. And some of you are still connected with these people who are pressuring you to do certain things, and they're putting stipulations out there, and they're telling you what you won't dare to do. Do you feel like certain times, or there are certain things that just come up mysteriously? It just all of a sudden appear. It's like a person saying, man, I was just going through my information on the internet, and I had this thought, pornography. Do you think that just comes up, or there was a seed planted? There's a seed planted. There are issues and problems you ignore and refuse to fight against and defeat that later becomes your children's battle. Do you know that? The things you refuse to combat becomes your children's battle. Whenever I read the great passage about the children of Israel, interesting story, because their story is something that we need to pay attention to. Because God wanted them to have the best. And yet their fear caused them to have what was less. You settle when you are in fear because you feel as if something cannot happen, or you don't have the full sense of confidence that you're going to achieve whatever it is that you're endeavoring to do. And so when you see and read the story about Israel, they leave Egypt, and this is a triumphant event, man. I mean, God does miraculous things to deliver them out of Egypt. They get on the way to Egypt. God opens the Red Sea. They walk through the Red Sea on dry land. Powerful, man. And God does all of these things, and then they still don't trust him. They still don't trust God. They still don't think God is capable of doing the next thing. And so God says, by this time, hey, you're ready. Over in Numbers, he says, you're ready. Go, you get ready, go in. And they determine they're going to get spies. They get spies, and 10 spies come back. There are 12 spies altogether. 10 spies come out with a negative report. 2 spies comes out with a positive report. They arrive at the banks of Jordan and don't go in. You're right there, but you don't go in. You can start, but you won't start. You need to read the book, The Art of the Start. I'm serious. Some people just need to know that some things don't come just by speaking it. You got to start when you speak. God had promised them the land on the other side of the Jordan, but they stopped to send these spies, and they allowed 10 spies to become the ideal philosophy for their next stage. The entire nation became stagnant and wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. And God said, if you read your Bibles, you see, God doesn't just do things just to do things and throw numbers out of the sky. They went over there, spied the land out for how many days? 40 days. And God said, since you're not going in, for 40 days, each day is going to indicate a year that you're going to wander in the wilderness. So in other words, you set your punishment. You set your punishment. And he said, now, listen, he was saying to them, when you read Deuteronomy, remember Deuteronomy is a second reading. That's what it means. It means the second reading. That means that Moses is saying, I want to inspire you because I don't want you to mirror what your parents did. You're going to have to go into this land. And when you get there, he says, it's going to be a place with houses that you didn't build. Land, plush, and just, you didn't have to do anything to the land. It's well taken care of. The wealth of the wicked are laid in store for the just. He says, it's going to be your time. He's inspiring them, and he says, you got to remember when you get in there that you're not there because of your goodness. He says, you're not going to be able to say that you're there because of your righteousness. He says, we already know you're a stiff-necked people. Read your story. He says, we already know you're stiff-necked, but you're going to have to encounter what your daddy refused to encounter, what your mama didn't want to do. When mama said, honey, maybe we should just hold and wait on and just see if it, just leave it alone. We don't need no trouble. Sometimes you got to start trouble. Amen. And if the enemy starts trouble, you say there won't be no trouble if you don't start no trouble. But if you want trouble, I'll give you trouble. God doesn't want his people to be passive. Are you listening to me? Contrary to popular belief, don't let the devil deceive you as to make you feel, listen to me, as to make you feel like you are welcome at because you are a Christian. Don't let that devil deceive you. Oh, you're a Christian. You ought to just take this and you ought to take that. Man, that something is inside of a person that makes a person not speak up. You don't even see that in Jesus, and he's our perfect example. When they called Jesus all kinds of names, he didn't say you was another one. He just spoke in terms of your mouth is like an open sepulcher. That's a grave site. He would say you're vipers and snakes. Jesus wasn't passive. He was not a punk. He didn't let people punk him. He is like, ooh, here comes the scribes and Pharisees. When they said, Jesus, here they come. They're coming to take your life. Jesus looked at all of the soldiers that were coming for him, and they said, Jesus, are you the one? And he looked at them and said, I am the one. And they fell back. It wasn't because of bad breath. It was because he was bad. In other words, nobody's going to take something from him. He's going to give it. You need to take that James Brown attitude. I don't want nobody to give me nothing. Open up the door. I'll get it my doggone self. That's why Abraham was such a profound person of God that God honored, because he refused to take anything from the king. And he says, I don't want you to be able to say that you made me rich. He valued the richness of God rather than the richness from men. Glory to God. You got to know, and I've said it on Wednesday night, everything you have is a test for you. Are you going to take your wealth and all of a sudden turn it into a golden calf, or are you going to turn it into a golden seed? You're going to have to determine everything God gave you as a test. That's why he says he gave them manna from heaven to test them. Are they going to trust that God's going to be their provision, or they're going to trust in the provision that God provided? It's easy to get something and say, oh, I got it now. And all of a sudden, you no longer trust the one who brings it to you. And God said, I'm testing them. And that test is going to qualify them for the invisible. See, what you do on your way to the promised land while you're in the wilderness determines whether you're going to get in or not. If you murmur and complain in the wilderness, you disqualify yourself for the promised land. Why is that? I shared it on Wednesday. Because if you're murmuring and complaining about what you have now, and we don't have enough of this, and we ain't got that, and we ain't got this, imagine what it's going to be like when you get into the promised land. It's like I said the example. You look in your refrigerator right after Thanksgiving, full of food, and say there's nothing in this house to eat. You know there's food in the house. It's just not what you're hungry for. God was dealing with these people, and he had Moses to give them the last summary of what he promised them. And this was an entirely different generation. 40 years before, their predecessors had an opportunity to go into the promised land. And God said, The last one that was left was Moses. Moses couldn't go over. He could only look over. He was able to look over, but he couldn't enter. And Moses was telling them what your daddy didn't face, what your mama didn't face, the generational curses, they're coming up again. And he says, the same giants, I read to you the verse, the same giants that were there 40 years ago, they're still there. How many of you know your problem ain't going nowhere if you don't deal with them? The debt is not going anywhere by ignoring it. Not answering the phone is not going to fix it. You hear that phone ring? Ring. 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 The kids say, Mama, get the phone. Don't answer it. Ring. Ring. Here comes up on a message. Hi, is Mr. So-and-so there? I'm calling from such and such collection agency. Shut that off. 10 minutes later, ring, ring, ring. You're scared to answer a phone that you have in your house that you bought. You're scared of your own phone. Ring. 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 Scared because you want to ignore the obvious, but you're going to have to confront it. You're going to have to buy a house sometime. And it's coming up again. That's why they hold on to things. Oh, you don't want to answer our stuff. All right, okay. Yeah, okay. We're going to put this mark on your stuff, your credentials, your credit, your character. We're going to mark it and say, they don't like dealing with these giants. My thing is just, and my mother always told me, Mama always told me certain things. She said, don't ignore your creditors. She said, if you talk to them, they're more lenient. Just keep talking to them. It's when you ignore them. You say, I don't have all the money, but I can send this. And they say, if you get somebody religious, I don't want that. Well, sir, this is all, I know this thing is recorded, so I'm letting you know. I'm going to send what I do have. No, I don't have $150,000 right now, but I can send you $150. Yes, it will. Yes, I will take care of it immediately. Yeah, and yes, you can. I will call you back and determine a payment plan, because I want to pay this debt. Sir, I can't speak yet. That's what. Yes, sir. I'm from the Motisa tribe, Motisa. And I just deal with it. Look at somebody and say, you got to deal with it. You see, y'all don't like James Brown, but James Brown was the original poetry. In his poetry, I said poetry. He was the original poet, man. His words may have come in pieces, but like the big payback. And he would say things like, you got to deal with it. You got to deal with it. This little things like you got to, y'all know that James Brown, man? You got to deal with it. Hey, you get down with my mama. That ain't right. I don't know karate, but I know karate. See, y'all don't know the song. All the young people are like, what kind of song is this? We had songs, you had to deal with certain things growing up. Even when you had people who would smile in your face, all the time they want to take your place, you got to deal with them for what they are. And what are they? Undisputed truth would tell you, they would say, smiling faces sometimes pretend to be your friend. Smiling faces tell lies. And there's an evil that lurks within. Can you dig it? You see, you see, we grew up knowing that if you dance to the music, you got to pay the piper. God was saying, Israel, you may have had a past 40 years ago, but now your children are going to have to go through the same thing until somebody breaks this curse and enters the promised land that I gave you. 40 years later, your children are dealing with your mess. You hear, the politicians years ago, we don't want to leave the national debt to our children. Yeah, you take my Social Security, that's what you're doing. It's like everyone should know to a degree that what giants you ignore are the giants you're going to eventually have to face. What's my point in this? Israel fled from those giants 40 years ago when their children came back 40 years later, and those giants were still there. You may ignore certain things about you and your habits, but rest assured you will eventually have to face them. You might as well face that anger issue right now. You need to face your immaturity. You need to face your mental and spiritual lack. You need to face your financial problems. You need to face your pornography issue now. You need to face your childhood abuse issues now. You need to face your low self-esteem issues now. You need, listen, to face your fears of not speaking up now. You need to face your issues of commitment now. You need to face your issues of feeling lonely now. You need to face your issues of fear and being undisciplined and inconsistent. You need to face your fears and your giants and stop saying, why are all these things happening to me? Peter said, think it not strange when some fiery trial comes to try you. You see, your promised land is occupied by these types of things, these giants. And believe me, they're not going anywhere. They're not going anywhere. I'll never forget what a person said, I have such a problem with this and this physical thing, masturbation. I said, well, what do you think if you look at pornography all day? I said, can we talk? You see, your life is established by images. You live out the image that you see. Everything around you, your home, how it looks, is the image that you have on the inside of you. Nothing outside of you in your life looks anything different. Whatever you don't see yourself wearing, you don't wear it. Are you listening? But there are some subconscious things that you're dealing with and you don't know why. You don't know why you keep putting up with Negroes or Jesus that don't have jobs and aren't going anywhere. And you keep falling in love with the same personality. It's not the person, because it's just a different person, but the same character. You keep falling for the same thing. When most things collapse suddenly, the divorce, the bankruptcy, the nervous breakdown, the loss of a job, leaving God, the affair, the destruction of a business, the breakup of close relationships, we have a propensity to think that destruction was immediate, but not the case. Somewhere down the line, there was a small leak or an erosion or deterioration in the foundation.